The movie Tears of the Sun tells the story of Lieutenant Waters leading a Navy SEAL team on a mission. During the mission, they defy orders from their superiors and turn the plane around to rescue refugees. In Nigeria, a severe military coup has taken place. The local president and his entire family have been murdered by rebels. Ambassadors from various countries are rapidly evacuating the city. Off the coast of Africa, Lieutenant Waters and his SEAL team have just completed a mission where they rescued staff members from the U.S. Embassy. However, they are immediately assigned a new mission. This time, they must rescue an important figure, Dr. Lena, from an international aid organization, who is trapped in the midst of the violent unrest. Additionally, they are tasked with rescuing 2 nuns and a priest from a church. The team of 8 SEALs parachutes into the designated location, a church. Under the cover of night, they stealthily submerge themselves in a nearby river and, while one woman is distracted fetching water, they take her hostage. After a brief exchange, Waters quickly locates the person they were sent to rescue. Lena is busy performing surgery on wounded patients with the help of 2 nuns. The area is filled with chaos and injured refugees. Waters informs Lena of their mission, making it clear that she and the 2 nuns must pack up quickly, as they will be leaving immediately. However, a complication arises. Lena insists on taking 70 refugees with her. She refuses to leave unless they come along. Waters is naturally opposed. His orders were to extract Lena alone, and even the priest and nuns weren't the mission's focus. But Waters, faced with Lena's stubbornness, eventually agrees to take everyone with them. He instructs the refugees to gather and be ready to leave in half an hour, with only the bare essentials. In times of life and death, survival is the priority. The priest expresses his gratitude for everything they've done for the wounded, but she and one of the nuns decide they will stay behind. As they prepare to leave, the younger nun also chooses to stay. Waters, confronted with the brutal reality of the unrest and violence, knows deep down that none of them will survive. The team and the refugees travel through a dense forest and cross a small river. Due to the injured among them, they've only managed to cover 5 kilometers. The SEAL team works with precision. Some lead the way, others direct the group, and some remain at the back, watching for threats from behind. Night falls, and taking the wounded into consideration, Waters orders a 30-minute rest and has the team establish a perimeter. During this break, Dr. Lena tends to the wounded, administering medicine to children and applying treatments to others. But as she works, one of the SEAL members on watch spots a guerrilla unit of rebel forces. They immediately warn the refugees to hide. This is a rebel army, and if they are discovered, they will all die here. The man covers the child's mouth, ensuring not a sound escapes. The tense and oppressive atmosphere seems to be passing, but suddenly, a straggling rebel soldier spots them. Before he can raise an alarm, Waters kills him with a knife. Dr. Lena, terrified, trembles uncontrollably and runs to Waters. She knows the rebel unit will undoubtedly head to the church and hopes that the skilled Waters can stop them, but Waters refuses. It would endanger the safety of everyone here, and there's a chance the rebels might miss the church entirely. Another day arrives. The priest is teaching the young nun when suddenly the church doors burst open. A group of rebels, full of bloodlust, storms in. They gaze at the injured refugees, the very people they had wounded. The priest pleads for their lives, explaining that there are no soldiers here, only the sick and the wounded. The rebel leader glances at the priest's cross necklace, then looks up at the top of the church before giving a signal to his trusted subordinate. The leader exits. A man drew a cold weapon from his back and struck at the priest. White doves fly up into the sky, a sign of the turmoil that has erupted below. Meanwhile, the Navy SEAL team, with the refugees, arrives at the designated location. After scanning the surroundings to confirm safety, Ellis begins calling Star 1. 2 helicopters are set to arrive in 5 minutes, so they fire a signal flare onto the small clearing. The helicopters soon touch down. Waters grabs Lena's hand and starts running toward the helicopter. Lena asks why the other helicopter isn't landing, and Waters explains that it's an armed helicopter responsible for security. At that moment, the refugees are stopped by the soldiers. Just as she's about to board, Lena realizes that Waters never intended to take all of them with her. Waters, bound by his orders, tells her that his mission is to extract her, not the refugees. Feeling betrayed, Lena slaps Waters across the face and spits at him. Ultimately, Waters forcibly drags her onto the helicopter. The refugees, heartbroken, watch as their angel, Dr. Lena, is taken away. They know that without her, they have no way out of this war zone, and death is almost certain. The guerrilla fighters are slaughtering innocent people all around. and the SEAL team members board the helicopter, leaving the refugees behind. The mission has been successfully completed, but the people left behind can only cry in despair. On the helicopter, no one speaks. They all know that the refugees left behind stand little chance of surviving. The helicopter moves swiftly through the jungle, passing over the church they had left. The edge of the nearby lake is now stained red, and the church is engulfed in flames, about to turn to ash. Lena quickly rises and looks down. The ground is littered with the corpses of the wounded. She can't control herself and begins to sob, screaming in agony. All the lives Lena had worked so hard to save have been taken by death. The scene is horrific, and not a single person will survive. After her outburst, Lena curls up in a corner, no longer crying. The SEALs remain silent, unable to say a word. Waters looked around at all of his teammates, then glanced at the exhausted Dr. Lena. With tears in his eyes, he said something that shook everyone. "We're going back." Next, the helicopter turned around, heading back to the refugees. Waters was determined to help the refugees escape across the border. His hardened but compassionate heart wouldn't allow him to leave them behind. Their helicopter could only fit 12 people, so they decided to take the women and children first. The remaining refugees would continue marching toward Cameroon, hoping they could contact their superiors to send more helicopters. But the immediate problem was that the helicopter was already under heavy fire and couldn't enter Nigerian airspace. Commander Bill told Waters that he would try to reach them as soon as possible, but for now, they were on their own. The SEAL team led the refugees onward. At this point, enemy leader Turways noticed the American signal flares. After investigating the scene, he realized that some people had boarded the helicopter while others had gone into the mountains. A guerrilla force began pursuing them, and soon, the nearby village was filled with gunfire. Kelly Lake observed what looked like a massacre about to unfold. Waters took in the horrifying scene and ordered the sniper to move to higher ground. So far, they had only spotted 7 bandits. Ellis noticed that the huts were likely full of people. Commander Bill had previously instructed the SEAL team that they were not allowed to fire unless fired upon, but they couldn't stand by and watch any longer. Waters called in all 8 team members, instructing Dr. Lena and the refugees to hide in the mountains. The heavily armed SEALs lined up under Waters' command, attaching silencers to their guns. They didn't spend time debating whether this fight was justified or considering the rules of engagement. They just wanted to save the refugees in the village from the gunmen. Waters began assigning tasks. The sniper would take out the person starting the fire, while the rest split into 2 teams, planning to flank the enemy from both sides while maintaining complete silence. One by one, the 7 members moved to surround the village. As Waters and his teammates entered, they saw piles of dead refugees, a grim sign that the soldiers had been slaughtering people all day. The SEALs, gripping their silenced pistols, began a stealth attack. Using cover and swift movement, they eliminated the rebels in just a few minutes. From the mountains, the watching refugees wept once more. Their country had seen countless massacres like this one, and yet they were powerless to stop it. James took down a soldier who was raping a woman shockingly. The soldier was just a child. As they looked at the dead infants, both James and Kelly Lake's eyes welled up with tears. Waters stared at the bodies of the dead refugees and the gray, overcast sky, overwhelmed by the horror of war. After the battle, everyone fell into deep thought. They couldn't comprehend why the world was this way. Waters was haunted by nightmares, and when he awoke, his instinctive reaction was to raise his gun. One of his men informed him, "We've got a problem." Checking the computer, Waters saw a large armed force heading toward them, likely to catch up in 1 to 2 hours at most. There had to be a reason why such a large force was tracking them, and someone must have informed the enemy. Waters realized that among the dozens of refugees, someone had been passing information to the enemy. He asked Lena to identify anyone who had arrived at the church in the last 3 days. They collected all the rifles the refugees had. At that moment, one refugee tried to run. The sniper took aim and fired. Lena, watching her friend die, screamed in anguish. In his last breaths, the dying refugee revealed that his family had been kidnapped and he was forced to provide information. The person behind it all was Sadik. He was just one of many who had provided intelligence to the rebels. James found a communication device on the man's body. Waters shouted, demanding to know what information had been passed, and with his dying breath, the refugee uttered a name, Arthur. Waters was furious. He needed to find out quickly why the rebels were chasing them, why someone had signaled their location to the Nigerian soldiers, and how over 300 soldiers were being directed toward them. Waters threw the communication device to James, He knew the refugees were hiding something from him, and he had to find out what it was. If they didn't talk, he would start killing. He began counting down from 5. Raising his gun, Waters aimed it at one of the refugees. Suddenly, a young man stepped forward. It turned out he was the only son of President Samuel. The rebels had not killed the entire presidential family, they had murdered his father, along with his mother and Arthur's 2 sisters. His father had fought for the rights of the people, for his nation. Arthur's bodyguard also stepped forward to speak on behalf of Arthur's father. Waters turned to Lena, realizing she had known about Arthur all along. Lena admitted she hadn't trusted them at the time. After uncovering the truth, their primary mission became clear. They had to keep moving. They were about an hour away from Cameroon, but they also knew that the 300-man army was relentlessly pursuing them through the night. A few flies buzzed overhead, and Sadik's forces were closing in. Guided by the signal, Sadik raised his binoculars and saw that their informant was already dead. While Turways and Sadik were discussing strategy, one of the soldiers started fiddling with the communication device on the informant's body. Fortunately, it wasn't a bomb. Just as the soldier put the device back down, hidden in the jungle, James fired off 2 shots and quickly retreated to regroup with his team. Waters received a call from Bill. Because their group included Arthur, the former president's son, the SEAL team had now been drawn into a foreign political conflict, complicating the mission and posing a serious threat to U.S. diplomacy. This greatly increased the danger of their operation. Arthur was a wanted criminal under the new regime, a massive liability. Waters lost his temper with Bill, insisting that he couldn't just let these people die. He demanded that Bill authorize air support to evacuate both the refugees and his own team. Bill, however, urged Waters to stick to the original plan. Waters gathered all the SEAL team members and relayed the orders from command. They were to leave Arthur behind and follow the mission as planned. But Waters told the team he wouldn't do that. He admitted he had broken his principles, gotten emotional, and dragged them all into this mess. Now, with immense danger looming, he wanted to hear their thoughts. The SEAL team's response was unanimous. "Captain, those Africans are my people too," one of the soldiers said. "All these years, we've only known how to follow orders. You did the right thing." Lena stepped forward as well, expressing her regret for not telling them about Arthur sooner. "I should have trusted you," she said. Waters defied his superior's orders, but he had the full support of his brothers. Their hearts were united. The jungle grew tense. The 8 soldiers stood ready, but what appeared in the bushes was just a black pig. As the SEAL team relaxed for a moment, Waters quickly ordered Ellis to throw a grenade. Fortunately, Kelly Lake, who had fallen, only suffered a shoulder wound. Kelly Lake kept apologizing to Waters. Suddenly, they were hit by a rocket attack, and the full-scale battle began. 8 men against an unknown number of enemies. The SEAL team, well-equipped and highly skilled, charged forward, using all their gear to wipe out an enemy squad. But it was likely just a test by Turway's forces. More were still behind. In the midst of the artillery fire, the refugees behind the SEAL team were heavily hit. Lena was knocked unconscious, only waking up after Waters repeatedly called her name. Michael came over, clutching his stomach. He was the first SEAL team member to fall in battle. More casualties followed as the rockets kept coming. Arthur's bodyguard was also killed. Waters, holding Arthur by the shoulder, shouted at him, "Now's the time to become a real man. Lead your people into Cameroon. Do you understand?" As the enemy launched a massive assault and the firepower increased, Waters continued to coordinate tactics. James was down to his last bomb. James charged toward the enemy, moving swiftly to plant the bomb. The team began covering James as he set the bomb along the enemy's path. Machine gunfire erupted as James dashed forward again, expertly placing the bomb. Under the cover of his comrades' fire, he sprinted back, diving and rolling, quickly getting into position, gun in hand. A fierce battle erupted between both sides. As the enemy advanced, James triggered the final bomb. Ellis quickly radioed command, urgently requesting air support. They were only 1 kilometer from the Tanhila border, just 1 more kilometer to cross into safety. 7 men against 300. The refugees, running out of ammo, picked up whatever weapons they had left. Waters raised his gun, deadly accurate. The M249 gunner kept firing rocket-propelled grenades and machine guns non-stop. Everyone fired while retreating at the same time. Meanwhile, 2 fighter jets took off from the aircraft carrier at sea, and on the battlefield, it was a fight to survive while withdrawing. During the retreat, Kelly Lake was shot again as he tried to save a woman, who also took several bullets. The sniper was hit and fell. 3 of the 8 SEAL team members had already been killed. The refugees crossed the final river marking the border. Kelly Lake, using his body to shield the woman, vowed to protect her as long as he drew breath. Waters, carrying the unconscious Lena, crossed the river. Arthur and the others followed closely. James and Owen stayed behind to cover them, only meters away from the advancing enemy. As they crossed the river, Owens was shot and fell into the water. They scrambled into the tall grass, with the enemy right behind them, also crossing the river. The border fence was now in sight, but gunfire still rained down from behind. Waters took a bullet to the leg. He tore off his bandage and tightly wrapped it around the wound. The enemy, with AK-47s, continued firing relentlessly into the grass. At that moment, Star One arrived. 2 fighter jets swooped in, responding to Ellis's call. Ellis, having discarded his rifle, was now using his last handgun to cover their retreat. The enemy's AK-47s kept flashing red as Ellis took 3 bullets, collapsing and unable to stand. Waters ordered the doctor and the refugees to run toward the border, while he hobbled toward his fallen comrade. The refugees finally reached the Cameroon border. They kept running, and Waters clasped hands with Ellis. However, crossing the border became a new challenge. The Cameroonian soldiers, without proper orders, refused to let them pass. The SEAL team's doctor arrived and began treating Ellis's wounds. Waters asked about Owens and James, who were still behind. The doctor told him that Owens was already dead, and James was unlikely to make it. At that moment, James, who hadn't yet run out of bullets, was shot. Slowly, he crawled toward his comrades. Just then, the fighter jets finally established contact with Waters. The enemy was closing in fast, but Star One spotted their white signal. The jets armed their weapons, bringing a glimmer of hope to the desperate survivors. The remaining SEAL team members huddled together. Star One locked onto the enemy's position, and then, with a push of the red button, 4 missiles shot out from the aircraft, igniting the battlefield in a blaze of explosions. The hundreds of enemy soldiers chasing them were instantly engulfed by the raging fire. Shortly after, 3 helicopters arrived at the Cameroon border. The SEAL team was down to only 4 members, all severely wounded. Lena and Arthur rushed toward General Waters. The refugees broke down in tears, weeping for Waters and apologizing for the fallen soldiers. Everyone knew that if the helicopter hadn't turned back, the 4 SEAL team members wouldn't have died. But if it hadn't turned back, none of the refugees would have survived. They would always remember the bravery of the 8 SEAL team warriors. A commanding officer stepped off the helicopter and ran to the border, producing an official order. He instructed the border guards to open the gate. The colonel saluted Waters, acknowledging the success of their mission. They had brought back Dr. Lena and averted a disaster. As the film ends, a quote from 18th century Irish statesman Edmund Burke appears on screen. "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." I'm a movie buff. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.